Hello everyone, peace be upon you all. Welcome to the third video where we analyze Ibn Taymiyyah's book, The Demonstration of Deceit. In this video, we are going to read about the origins of Jahm ibn Safwan and his theology. Let's start reading. Richard Frank argued that Jahm's system manifests itself as clearly and unambiguously Neoplatonic in structure and content. Neoplatonism is a version of Platonism, which is following Plato, the philosopher, and it was initiated by a Roman philosopher known as Plotinus. So Frank argues that Jahm is a Neoplatonist and based his argument on parallels between Jahm's theses and Plotinus's Enneades. The Enneades is a book by Plotinus. So he found some similarities between Jahm and Plotinus, in particular on Jahm's distinction between God and things, or ashya in Arabic. This distinction between God and things indicates that God is not a thing, and that depends on his definition of things. If a thing is the things that are inanimate, then God is definitely not a thing. But if we define things as what exists, then God is definitely a thing, and we'll learn more about that later. It can hardly be denied that Jahm drew on ancient and late ancient discussions between Platonists, Peripatetics, Stoics, and Epicureans on the relationship between the incorporeal and the corporeal, the active and the passive. In other words, it is natural for people to be influenced by the traditions prior to them, and the most notable philosophical traditions prior to Jahm were the Platonists, the Peripatetics, the Stoics, and Epicureans. As for the relationship between the incorporeal and corporeal, the corporeal thing is that thing that is physical or material, that which has three dimensions: a length, a width, and a depth, a size, a location, a surface area, a weight, and so on. In contrast, the incorporeal thing is the non-physical or immaterial thing, that which has no dimensions, no size, no location, and so on. So if the incorporeal thing hypothetically exists, what is its relationship with the corporeal? As for the relationship between the active and passive, it is the same relationship between the pen and the paper. The pen is the active agent who does actions, while the paper is the passive patient who is subject to actions, which actions act upon. So, can the corporeal thing act upon the incorporeal, and vice versa? So these were the discussions prior to Jahm between the philosophers. Jahm's physics and ontology are grounded on his basic distinction between the existent corporeal and the incorporeal, which is either other than the body or non-existent. The existent corporeal hence is opposed to both the existent incorporeal, i.e. God, and the non-existent non-corporeal. So Jahm's physics and philosophy is based on the distinction between the existent and the non-existent on one hand, on the other hand between the corporeal and the incorporeal. In terms of the existent, there are two types of existence: corporeal and incorporeal. So the non-existent is opposed to the existent corporeal and the existent incorporeal. On the other hand, in terms of the incorporeal, there are two types of incorporeals: existent and non-existent. So the corporeal is opposed to the existent incorporeal and non-existent incorporeal. I hope this graph clarifies these couple of sentences. Now let's read them again with this graph in mind. So Jahm's physics and ontology are grounded on his basic distinction between the existent corporeal, or the corporeal in short, and the incorporeal. Okay, and this incorporeal is split in two, as we have said. One which is existent, i.e., God, and one which is non existent. This existent God is incorporeal, which is opposed to the existent corporeal. Okay? On his basic distinction between the existent corporeal and the incorporeal, which is either other than the body, which is the existent incorporeal, God, or the non existent incorporeal. The existent corporeal, hence, is opposed to both the existent incorporeal, i.e., God, and the non existent non corporeal. Causal efficacy can be assigned to the incorporeal existent only. In other words, causal efficacy can only be assigned to God. What is causal efficacy? Causal efficacy is one of the four causalities of Aristotle. According to Wikipedia, the four causes or four explanations are, in Aristotelian thought, four fundamental types of answer to the question why, in analysis of change or movement in nature: the material, the formal, the efficient, and the final. In short, like this illustration illustrates, the material cause is the wood, the formal explanation is the design, the efficient cause is carpentry, the final cause is dining. According to Aristotle, he defines the agent or the efficient cause of an object as that which causes change or drives transient movement or motion, such as a painter painting a house. In many cases, this is simply the thing that brings something about. For example, in the case of a statue, it is the person chiseling away which transforms a block of marble into a statue. According to Lloyd, of the four causes, only this one is what is meant by the modern English word cause in ordinary speech. So, in other words, only God can cause things in the ordinary speech. And in philosophical words, God is the only agent, efficient agent, or efficient cause. Now back to Mr. Jahm ibn Safwan. According to the Oxford Handbook, hence, patiency belongs to the corporeal and the agency to the incorporeal. So only God can act, and material things, only the corporeal things, can be acted upon, can only be subject to acts. Knowledge is grounded on the existent corporeal only, because only this can be an object of perception, knowledge, or estimation. This indicates that God, who is incorporeal, cannot be the object of perception, knowledge, or estimation. So this has very dangerous implications. How will Jahm solve this problem? We will see. These aspects, only to some extent, are in line with the Middle Platonic and Neoplatonic tradition. So these are not fully Neoplatonic or fully Platonic. In fact, they contain an anti-Platonic element which is crucial for Jahm's epistemology, ontology, and theology. What is that? In the Jahmite system, there are no immaterial existents and causes except God. God is the only efficient cause, and God is the only immaterial existent. The Jahmites refused the existence of incorporeal composite things. Composite means that which has parts, and maintained that only one incorporeal, incomposite, and active principle can be proven to exist, namely God, who is cause of all things, which is itself uncaused and necessarily exists, given that the corporeal things which come to be and pass away and change their states of being are real existent things. So, on one hand, the Platonists believed in the existence of incorporeal composite things, while on the other hand, Jahm believed in the existence of one incorporeal thing, namely God, and that's because God is the only incorporeal thing that can be proven to exist. At the same time, God is the only agent that can be proven to exist, and that he is the cause of everything, and that God himself is uncaused, and that he necessarily exists as the explanation for the existence and changing of the corporeal things. And when she says that this is given that the corporeal things are real existent things, she's pointing to the fact that Jahm did not doubt the existence of corporeal things and that his theology took their existence as a given. The epistemology of the Jahmites, including their theory that the certainty that there is a cause correlated to every alteration happens by intuition, is empiricist, based on the distinction between concept formation by characteristics, or sifat, abstracted from sensible things on the one hand, and by the intuition that there must be a cause of their existence on the other hand. Meaning that the Jahmites are empiricists, not idealists, unlike the Platonists. Platonic idealism is called the theory of forms. In other words, the theory of ideas, or Platonic idealism, or Platonic realism, is a philosophical theory of metaphysics developed by the classical Greek philosopher Plato. The theory suggests that the physical world is not as real or true as forms. According to this theory, forms, conventionally capitalized and also commonly translated as ideas, are the non physical, timeless, absolute, and unchangeable essences of all things, of which objects and matter in the physical world are merely imitations. Now, the Jahmis reject all this because they reject the existence of incorporeal things. We only know that God exists based on intuition. As for other things, we form concepts of them through observation alone. Here we have a sensible thing with certain characteristics. It's red, it's small, and it's apple shape. We abstract or extract from it these characteristics and we form the concept of apple in our heads. So, according to the Jahmis, this concept formation process is different from intuition, from our intuition, that there must be a cause for the existence of sensible things. And this is an empiricist view that contradicts Neoplatonism. They also refuse incorporeal objects of God's knowledge, which entails the refusal of the interpretation of the Platonic ideas as thoughts of God. So the Jahmites are not Neoplatonists, as Frank has argued. Rather, they lean more towards Aristotelianism and empiricism. And so we reach here the end of the video and see you later. Goodbye and peace.